So happy Pride weekend, everyone. This is the place to be, and Youth on Fire, which is a program of Fenway Health, is an epicenter of ensuring that we are able to provide the services to homeless and street-involved LGBTQ youth, opening the doors when so many others have been shut to them, and ensuring that they can safely and comfortably get the kind of shelter which they need. Nearly 20 years ago, Masha and Tanya of Malden, Massachusetts, where I live, became the first legally married same-sex partners in the United States. And I'm very proud to come from Malden and know that that is an historical fact. They got married right down the road here from Cambridge. And Massachusetts so often is at the front line in the fights for equity, recognizing their right to legally marry over a decade before the Supreme Court recognized same-sex marriage. It was symbolic of a sea of change. The recognition of same-sex marriage was a message that people should be free to live as they are and love who they want. But this fight is far from over. In the last 6 months, state legislatures have passed 75 bills discriminating against LGBTQ Americans and blocking access to gender-affirming care. Hundreds more have been proposed. Drag shows have been attacked. Hospitals providing gender-affirming care are receiving bomb threats, and local clinics are installing security systems all across our nation. Human Rights Campaign declared a national state of emergency for LGBTQ Americans. And politicians at the federal, state, and local level are fueling the fire of a youth mental health crisis. Programs like Youth on Fire and Fenway Health stand on the front lines, reaching out, helping those who need help, providing a hand, providing holistic, compassionate care that meets people where they are by providing medical and behavioral health care, health screenings for HIV and other viruses, support in navigating health insurance and necessities such as food, showers, and internet access. Youth on Fire is a shining example of what community health can and must be for our state and for our country. But amid this national emergency, Youth on Fire is continuing to do what LGBTQ communities have been forced to do for decades: build networks of care without the support and recognition which they deserve. That must end. Congress must run into the fire and take a stand in the face of extremist, hate-fueled attacks on the LGBTQ community. It's why I introduced the Trans Bill of Rights resolution to recognize the federal government's duty in protecting and codifying trans rights, ensuring their access to medical care, housing, safety, and economic security. The Trans Bill of Rights lays out a comprehensive framework for these protections and is a call to action for the federal government. Real threats require real action, and I am taking additional steps in order to answer that call to action. I will be introducing legislation later this month to fund research at the National Institutes of Health and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to study barriers to gender-affirming care and the impact of these barriers on health outcomes for individuals in our community. This legislation will help us better understand and respond to the barriers to care that the trans community faces and take steps to close disparities in health for the community, for everyone in the community. We need to make sure that our resources reflect the reality of the moment, and we need trans people, particularly youth, to know that we see what they are experiencing and we will support them in their challenges. Trans health is health. Healthcare is a human right. LGBTQ rights are human rights. I have witnessed time and time again that the resolve of the LGBTQ community will not be defeated. This Pride Month and every month, we must continue to fight for equality and justice for all. Massachusetts has long led the nation in the fight for equal rights because in the Bay State we know that justice for some is not justice for all. So happy Pride to everyone this weekend. Happy Pride every day of the year for the trans community. So now let me introduce our first speaker today, Reverend Amy Whitcomb-Slummer. Reverend Whitcomb-Slummer is a licensed attorney, Episcopal priest, and healthcare regulatory expert with over 30 years of healthcare policy experience. Whitcomb-Slummer has a long history of legal advocacy and social justice work on behalf of vulnerable people, focusing on healthcare, education, immigration, and voting rights. I'm delighted that she could be here with us today. Welcome, Reverend Slummer. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I send you greetings from Ellen LaPointe, who is our CEO at Fenway Health, Mandy Lucier, Catherine Sloss-Hartman, who are very sorry that they couldn't be with us this morning, but we'll be so fortunate to get to hear from Anita Pete. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and to have Senator Markey meet our program staff and some of Fenway Health's Youth on Fire program participants. Senator Markey has long been a champion for the disenfranchised and the vulnerable residents of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I'm grateful for your commitment and leadership in tackling some of the most difficult challenges faced by Youth on Fire's patrons. The young people who come to Youth on Fire trusting that we have a safe and supportive space to offer have often experienced discrimination and sometimes violence. Most have no solid foundation on which to stand, on which they might thrive. Young people come to Youth on Fire for so many reasons, from responding to family rejection to a lack of support in their communities. Each seeks a safer environment and a place to be known. The remarkable staff at Youth on Fire offer a warm welcome, a smile, and a sense that we are grateful when young people aged 14 to 24 seek our program out and entrust us with their next steps, even if that next step is simply a safe place to take a warm shower. Youth on Fire is so much more than that. We welcome each program participant and appreciate them as the remarkable individual that they are. For some, particularly members of the LGBTQIA communities, they face not just family or community discrimination and rejection, but many have found that accessing health care and other vital parts of our social safety net can be fraught, if not impossible. The fear-fueled public backlash against our transgender siblings has received a great deal of national attention. However, when you witness the destructive impact of discrimination, and ugliness on individual lives, the cost is incalculable. For members of our transgender communities, not only is stigma, misunderstanding, and sometimes hatred hurled their way, increasing numbers of state and local jurisdictions, as you just mentioned, are criminalizing their health care. Without access to care, we know there are many trans and gender diverse people across the country who are unable to access or afford gender-affirming care, or are using gender-affirming hormones off-label, putting themselves at risk of unknowable long-term effects. We know gender-affirming care is safe, effective, and most importantly, gender-affirming care is life-saving. We must have federally funded studies that strengthen standards of care and drive evidence-based policymaking while prioritizing the availability of these drugs for continued life-saving treatments. Senator, Fenway Health is so grateful for your legislation, for your leadership, and for the investments that you are calling on others to make so that we'll identify and highlight the gaps in care and barriers to these vital services. Once identified, Fenway will stand with you as each piece of the discriminatory system is permanently dismantled. Fenway Health and our Youth on Fire program are dedicated to making sure that every patient, client, staff member, and program participant is welcome at our sites and can easily access our services. We're committed to ensuring that each person who entrusts their story will not only be welcomed, but celebrated for the unique individual that they are. We have a great deal of shared and difficult work ahead of us. We thank you, Senator Markey, and the members of your wonderful staff. It's a pleasure to work with them always. And I thank you in advance, Anita, for the remarks you'll give us. You and your Youth on Fire colleagues are setting a path that we hope will be followed across the country. Happy Pride, and thank you all for being here.
Beautiful, thank you, Reverend. And our next speaker is Anita Pete, the Housing Coordinator for Youth on Fire. In the 2 years she has been with Youth on Fire, Anita has worked tirelessly to connect youth to lifeline resources like medical care and housing. Anita is a champion for the members Youth on Fire serves, and it's my pleasure to introduce Anita Pete.
On behalf of Youth on Fire, young adults, and staff, thank you, Senator Markey, for taking the time to come by and talk with us today. For over 20 years, Youth on Fire has provided access to clothing, food, STI and HIV testing, housing assistance, and stabilization, among other resources to youth who have been unheard and overlooked. Youth on Fire staff have assisted many young people with obtaining vital documents so that they are able to apply for jobs and housing. In building community, we have collaborated with other agencies in both the city of Cambridge and the city of Boston. Youth on Fire has been a haven of comfort for many young people when biological families haven't, because we believe in accepting people exactly as they are. Around 40% of our young people identify as LGBTQ+ and have experienced many barriers because of their identity. These barriers have been experienced in healthcare settings, jobs, and other various supportive service areas. It's time we break down those barriers and uplift the lives and voices of the young people we serve every day. It's crucial that we understand that they are the experts of their own experiences and that we should be looking to them to lead us forward. Thank you and happy Pride.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anita. As you can hear, we're in the middle of urban America. This is about as densely a populated city as exists in the United States. And these services are here for young people who need them. No matter what the service is, if they walk in the door here, they're going to have it provided for them. Shelter, food, just a place to go to feel comfortable, housing. It's all here for LGBTQ youth in the greater Cambridge, greater Boston area. And there's nothing more important than ensuring that there is a safe place where young people who have no other place to go can come in order to get the help which they need. That's why we're here today. We're here to talk about that, to ensure the funding continues to come to Youth on Fire, to Fenway Health, so that they can continue to provide those services for those who need them. And they are, without question, our neighbors, our friends, our family, and increasingly these programs provide them the safe space they need in our community to be able to survive and to thrive. So we're very honored to be here today. And are there any questions which any of you may have for us about anything?
Senator, can you just talk a little bit about your proposal to help these people, and where you see this all standing in Washington, the interest in Congress of doing things to help transgender individuals?
Yeah, well, obviously Republicans across the country are now attempting to demonize the trans community. 75 laws have already been passed in states across our nation. There are hundreds of other bills which have been proposed. Massachusetts has to be an oasis, putting protections for the trans community on the books, and that's our role. But beyond that, I have introduced a Trans Bill of Rights resolution into the United States Senate so that we can have this national debate over whether or not the trans community is entitled to all of the same rights under the 14th Amendment as everyone else is entitled to. And we need to have this debate in the same way 20 years ago that Massachusetts became the first state to legalize same-sex marriage, and today it seems like a non-issue. We have to give that same leadership here from Massachusetts today on the trans rights revolution that is taking place, but starting once again here in the Commonwealth.
There's, we know there's a lot of questions and some controversy around the hormone therapy that is being used now. Is it blocked?
Okay, just, that's right.
There is some questions and controversies about the hormone therapy being offered in the life of deal with gender dysphoria and how they might affect, particularly young people who may be uncertain about their gender orientation. As we're finding out about, AI, artificial intelligence, sometimes technology is moving faster than our ability to kind of understand it and cope with it. Do you have concerns in this area about the use of these new groundbreaking therapies to deal with this issue?
I think the debate is around who should have access to these medical treatments. And my feeling is that we should break down the discriminatory barriers, that we should ensure that those who need those treatments have access to them. And so we just don't want medical science to be politicized. We want it to be a medical decision between the individual and their physician to determine whether or not they qualify for and can use appropriately any and all of those technologies. Yeah, can you want to answer, Reverend?
Well, I will just thank the Senator very much and affirm that this is a conversation between a person and their provider. We know that there have been shortages of some of these medications, and that has a terrible impact on people's overall health. We need to make sure that we prioritize the continuity of care that our transgender patients require, which means making sure that the pipelines are still available. What we want to make sure we are preventing is off-label use of injectable hormone therapy, because we want to make sure that there are not unintended consequences. And we know the way to make sure that doesn't happen is to have transgender patients and people have access to the gender-affirming care that is life-saving for them. We know the impact on people's health and well-being. Part of the work that we have before us is to make sure that it's available in every jurisdiction, regardless of what the political persuasion of a state legislature is.
Thank you. Questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Senator, can we have your comment on the Trump indictment?
Yeah, there are now more counts against Donald Trump than a boxer in a losing match. Donald Trump stole documents violating the Espionage Act. He lied about it. He hid the documents. He obstructed the federal government's attempts to reclaim those documents. And the rule of law in the United States must apply. No one is above the law. We do not live in an autocracy where an individual leader can determine what he or she should be able to do separate from the laws which apply to everyone else. So this is a good day for the United States. President Trump is going to be indicted, but under a law which applies to everyone else, the espionage law, saying he cannot steal documents, hide them, he cannot lie about it, he cannot obstruct justice. So I think it is a good day for our country.
Despite the indictment about him, the indictment hanging over him, it would appear he's still a viable candidate for the Republican nomination, given the popular support he continues to have in comparison to many other candidates that are running. What are your thoughts about that?
Unfortunately, MAGA Republicans do not believe that Donald Trump should have to abide by the laws which apply to every other American citizen. So this may actually strengthen him amongst the MAGA Republicans because they believe that what happened on January 6th was not a crime, did not violate the Constitution. So we'll have to live with that. But I think the American people in general believe that Donald Trump and every other president should abide by the laws which apply to every other citizen of our country. And that, at the end of the day, is why we have to trust the American people at the ballot box to ensure that Donald Trump does not win a second term.
And how would you size up the prospect of the Trump-Biden rematch?
Joe Biden already beat Donald Trump by 7 million votes. And he has had a tremendous record thus far as president, passing the CHIPS bill, strengthening gun safety laws, ensuring that we have the biggest climate package ever passed in the United States congressional history, provided trillions of dollars to help Massachusetts and other states deal with the coronavirus crisis that we had. So his record is absolutely historically great, and it's on top of him already beating Donald Trump by 7 million votes in 2020, and Donald Trump now subject to indictment for violation of the Espionage Act. I would say that smart money would be betting on Joe Biden to get reelected.